And now it's a walk down memory lane. This is my favorite segment of the podcast. I'm talking, of course, about the Android Journey story. If you're a listener and would like to come on live and talk about your Android Journey story, or would rather record and send it to us, then contact us via email at contactus@blindandroidusers.com. And now, here's this week's episode guest to talk about their Android Journey story. And now we conclude this episode with my favorite segment of the episode, of course, that my Android Journey story. And that's why we have Mike here. Mike, it's a wonderful thing, great, beautiful thing, my friend, to see you come on to talk with us about your Android Journey story. I remember you from years ago. You are no stranger to Android. I mean, you were there earlier on. And so take us down that road, Mike, memory lane, and just let baby rip.
Indeed. Okay, so I started with a Nexus 1, actually, and that had, and I guess my history too is kind of hacking Android phones, although the first time I did that, I did it kind of out of necessity, not because I chose to. It was, so I got a Nexus 1, and this was back in the days when you needed sighted help to set up the phone and to start TalkBack. You could not do it without sighted help. And I will say, I think it took Google a long time to get where they are, longer than I think we probably would have liked, but they did get there. Just it was a bit of a kind of a bumpy road in some places, but anyway, so the Nexus 1 that I got came with Android 2.2, and I had an iPhone, let's see, what did I have? I think I had an iPhone 3GS at the time.
3GS, probably, yeah.
Yep, I've always kind of walked parallel paths, switched between the two, at least at that time. And what happened with that Nexus 1, I had heard that Google had released 2.3. Gingerbread, but my Nexus 1 never got it. I kept checking for updates, and it never came. Well, it turns out what had happened was the Nexus 1 that I bought was from the UK, and it was basically had a carrier branded firmware on it.
And maybe Vodafone or Orange or something crazy.
Like that. And it's like, okay, so I started looking, it's like, okay, how can I get the Google stock ROM on this? Well, this was back in the days when you had external storage on devices. You had SD cards. And since it was a Google ROM, I didn't have to mess with unlocking the bootloader or anything like that. Apparently, from what I read, you just got the image, put it as a zip file on an SD card. Again, I had to get sighted help, but you put into recovery and just flash it. Well, I did that. And of course, I had to wipe the phone. But then once I got everything reconnected, the 2.3 update came down instantly. It was instantaneous. So, yeah. So that was kind of my first experience, kind of tinkering with Android. And then this was back in the days when the screen reader. Again, I don't know why Google took this approach. They really should have made the touchscreen accessible out of the box. They didn't. So I would compare the first versions of accessibility on Android very much kind of like what Narrator was in the Windows 98 or Windows 7 days. It would read the focus as you moved around, but any other text on the screen that was not focusable, you could not read. Now, that was okay for a lot of things, especially having come from the Symbian platform. Oh, I loved that platform. I still miss it to an extent.
It's a beautiful one, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I like some of that stuff too.
I loved that platform. So then I kind of switched between that and the iPhone for a while. I'm trying to remember what my next Android phone was. Okay, so yes, that phone did not, of course, the Nexus 1 did not have a keyboard. It had a trackball, but you really couldn't type on the touchscreen. And then there was mobile accessibility that came along, and of course made some things more accessible. They had their own keyboard that you could use to type and things like that. But at the time, to really have the best experience, you really needed a phone with ice-free shell was another thing. Yeah, that was a nice thing. It again, it offered limited functionality. It really, looking back on it, at this point, Apple was ahead of Google in accessibility. There's no getting around it. They were.
No question.
Yeah, they were. So, but they had phones with physical keyboards at the time. There was the one that I ended up getting was the Sony Xperia. What was it? Oh, what was that? I want to say the Xperia Pro.
Was that the Z3?
No, I don't think it was the Z3. This had a slide out keyboard to it.
Yeah, most of them had back in those days. A lot of them had that slide out. You know, I like the slide out keyboards for some reason.
I did too.
Beautiful.
And then, of course, there was the HTC Cha-Cha. It was called. Now that thing looked like a BlackBerry kind of. It just had a keyboard on the front. That was a nice little phone.
I like the Cha-Cha, and then there was the HTC. What was it? HTC was
the Desire Z was common. That
dominant.
It had a metal frame to it. It was, and the keyboard on that was nice. That had actually a little finger kind of D-pad on the front of it that you could flick up, down, left, and right, and then you pressed it to do select. That was a nice one. I had one. And I'll get to that in a moment. So
you also had a Motorola phone.
Yes,
that's another one that you did.
And
I
remember
which one it was.
I want to say the Moto G, but again, it was a slider keyboard.
Yeah, no, it wasn't the G, because the Moto G didn't get until 2013. The G series didn't come till 2013.
That might have been around when it was.
You had one prior. You were talking about it in one of your podcast episodes, and I know I had the Razr Max back then. I got the Max.
It wasn't the Razr.
2011.
I had two different Motorola's, and they both had QWERTY keyboards on them. And I want to say, was it the Moto M or M2 or something? I don't remember which ones they were. One thing I really got into was on some of these, and the Sony Xperia was the first one, putting a custom ROM on there, in particular Cyanogen mod. And that gave you a couple of advantages. It gave you mostly the stock Android experience, but it also would allow you to run newer versions of Android than what came with it. Sony updated that phone to 4.0 Ice Cream Sandwich. That was the first version of Android that had touchscreen access. It didn't have the accessibility focus yet. That would come next, but it did have, you could feel around on the screen, and when you found the item you wanted, you lift your finger and you tapped it. And okay, I mean, it worked. Then the biggest jump was 4.1 Jelly Bean. That's also, I think, when Google came out with the Nexus 7. And a lot of people were getting that tablet just to try the Android experience. But that's the version where we finally had where you could feel around, swipe left and right, and double tap to activate an item. Now, there were still some issues with it. The web views were still not very accessible, but I had put a Cyanogen mod 4.1, and then I think I got up to 4.3, which was still kind of considered Jelly Bean, I think, onto that phone, and it was good. It was usable at that point for the most part. There were still, again, some holes with it. And then I started kind of just getting into getting phones almost for the sole purpose of seeing if I could kind of hack them and install Cyanogen mod. And I got quite a few. I got, let's see, the Galaxy S3, the S4, the Desire Z, that was an HTC one. Let's see. Now the Samsungs were interesting because you really didn't have to unlock the bootloader if you got the international version. It was already unlocked. You just had to flash a custom recovery. And you could do that a couple of ways. I remember specifically with the Galaxy S3, you could use the Android platform tools, and you could install the custom recovery, and you had to type commands in the terminal, but you had to type like certain memory locations. I had to follow the instructions to a T, and it's like, if this fails, it's going to totally probably brick the device. Fortunately, it worked. So I had
I call it a dangerous game.
it was
You've got to be very adept and following those instructions to the T, like you said. Because if you didn't, you wound up with a little paperweight.
pretty much. And the thing is, TalkBack did not come with the CyanogenMod. Actually, CyanogenMod did not even have the Google apps. You had to install those separately. So what I had to create,
beautiful gaps, yeah.
Yep. So what I had to do was actually create a signed, which you could do. There were apps that would do this for you. You told it what app you wanted to install. I had to create a signed zip file, basically, of TalkBack, and install that at the same time, so it would install into the system partition when the CyanogenMod was installed, so it would be able to come up talking. So that, and then let's see, what other phones did I get? The HTC One. Now that was a nice phone. Then there was the One Plus. So I had gotten a bunch of these and just put cyanogen on them and used them. And then it kind of got to the point where, I think I had a Nexus 4 and a Nexus 5. Now those were stock Androids, so I don't think I tried to put cyanogen on those, but I just left it at the Google ROM. But so then what happened is cyanogen kind of disappeared. That's now called Lineage OS. It's still around, but I think there are still people that use it, but it's not as common anymore. And I think around, what was it? I still had an iPhone at this point. I had the 5S, I think. I loved the form factor of the iPhone 5 series. Loved that form factor.
I like nice small stuff.
Small rectangle. Yep.
I'm so scared of holding those because it's like it's going to fall out of my hand. Remember, I always tell this story. My friend and his wife and I went out, and we were out at the winery place. They like to kind of do that winery stuff. I don't. But then, they wanted me to take a picture of them, using her iPhone. I was so terrified because it's like the thing was going to fall out of my hand. It's so small, and I'm coming from my Android phone that I'm used to, bigger phones, from Samsung and all of that. Oh my gosh, I was terrified. No,
yeah, I was afraid you're going to drop it. And I've actually found, I'll get to that when I get to the current stuff about phone cases. But then, so it's probably around, and I think the web views had been kind of fixed at this point. But I think around, this is when two Android, phones no longer came with the physical keyboards. I think it was around like 2016, 2017, when the iPhone 8 came out. I decided, for the moment, I would still play with Android. I still play with my phones, but it wasn't my daily driver. And I did kind of go back to the iPhone for a while. I had an iPhone 8, then I had the 10R, that was an interesting one. And then in 2022, I bought the iPhone SE 3rd edition, that was in the same form factor as the iPhone 7 and the iPhone 8, and used that. And then in 2023, Android 13 was out. And by this point, I was really kind of getting into robot vacuums quite a bit. And I'm still into that. And playing with those, with the different apps and things like that. And some of them worked better on the iPhone than others, and I got kind of curious, how would the Android accessibility be with these? So in 2023, I bought a Pixel 7. And that was Android 13. And I knew that, you could now do the volume keys to turn on TalkBack. You didn't have to. Google went through a couple of iterations of that. At one point, I think the first gesture you had to draw some kind of odd shape on the screen or something like that to enable it, and that to me was
that was the ice cream, and not many people were successful enabling
that was
accessibility.
just silly. I don't know what they were even thinking to make something like that so complicated.
They're asking a blind person to draw a rectangle.
Just as a quick detour, the other thing I did play with, I won't talk about it much because this is an Android podcast, but I did actually get when Microsoft bought out Nokia, they were doing a Windows Mobile. I did buy one of the Microsoft Lumia phones to try it with a narrator. It worked.
I still have one of those in my drawer.
Yeah, I had it was the Lumia. I think
actually I have two of them
or something
I
like
got
that.
the Lumia, and I have the HTC 10, also running Windows.
Yeah, it was Windows 10 Mobile, and it was kind of a catch-22 because there weren't a lot of apps for it because it wasn't very popular, and it wasn't very popular, so developers didn't develop apps for it. But it did work. I mean, I was able to make phone calls. I could do text. I mean, narrator was good. You could browse the web with it with Edge at the time. I mean, it was usable for what it was.
Yeah.
So I got the Pixel 7 in 2023, and I knew how to enable TalkBack, so I set it up, and it's like, oh, this is working, really, really good. Now, of course, for those who don't know, there's a very interesting thing. If you go from an iPhone, I may actually save some people some trouble if I tell this story. There is an interesting issue that happens if you go from an iPhone to an Android phone, and it relates to iMessage. And what happens is, and even if you deregister it, it's still connected. What you have to do, if you use Macs, which I do, I might be a rare breed. I think a lot of people who are diehard Mac users, which I am, probably use their iPhone pretty much for everything. I don't. I'm a Mac user and use Android quite a bit. But anyway, you have to sign out of iMessage on your Macs, and also turn off the phone number on your iPhone, and then turn off iMessage. If you don't, what will happen is when you switch over to Android, and here's the insidious part, nobody will know what's happening. What will happen is iPhone users will send you messages, and they will show as delivered, but you will never receive them. And then what happens yeah. Oh, it happens. And then Apple has a website too you can go to make sure your phone number is deregistered. I've already decided if I do decide to go back to my iPhone at some point, which at this point I'm quite happy with Android, but if I would ever do that, I'm not going to enable iMessage at all. I'm not going to go through that again. I'll just use RCS on the iPhone messages. It's too much of a hassle, and you won't know what's happening until the person actually calls you and says, "Why haven't you responded to my text messages?" And the person's like, "Well, I haven't received any of them." That's the most insidious
you're
part.
ignoring me.
That's the insidious part, is you won't know it's happening.
Oh boy.
And a lot of times too, what you have to do is have an iPhone user delete the conversation thread, because it looks up the phone number and says, "Oh, that's an iMessage, so I'll send it that way," and it doesn't realize that it's changed until
Yeah.
So for anyone who, if you switch from an iPhone to Android, beware of that, and talk with some iPhone friends and be like, hey, can you send me a message? I want to make sure I'm getting these, because if you don't, you might miss messages and not realize it until even weeks later. So the Pixel 7, I I had gotten that, and I had no interest in installing a custom ROM at this point. Android 13 looked really good. That became my daily driver, and I was even really impressed with even some of TalkPack's features now to describe images. Even there was one app where it was able to read a CAPTCHA. Even this is before even the Gemini stuff. It had a limited ability, so it's like, yeah, this is really, really good. So that became my daily driver, and then we can go up to this year, I think, and I did want to, stay up to date with iPhone stuff just because I'm a techie. So I did buy an iPhone 17, and I did switch to that for a few months, and it was fine. But I did find myself longing to go back to Android because not only I think has Google made Android accessible, I think for some things they've actually passed up the iPhone. There are a couple of apps, in particular, Sirius XM, that works better on Android than on the iPhone, I think, and the Ecovacs app, which is some of the robot vacuums I've got, it works better on Android than the iPhone. So I really wanted to go back to Android. What kept me from doing it for a while, I would have done it sooner, was that crazy iMessage thing, trying to get my phone number deregistered off of there. And it turns out what the problem was even when you turn it off on the iPhone, if you're still signed into iMessages on your Macs, it still won't let go of the phone number. So it's like, okay, I'm doing a total purge here. Sign out of iMessage on the Macs, turn it off on the iPhone, and that finally did the trick. So how I ended up with a few different Pixels, that was not really my intent, but with the Pixel 10, Google only in the United States though, and I'm really not a fan of this. Apple did it with the iPhone 15, but they forced you to go eSIM, no physical SIM anymore, and I really was not a fan of that. A physical SIM is just easier to transfer. I still think this for the most part. It depends on your carrier.
Because all you have to do is just take the damn old SIM card from the other phone and slap it in, right? And you're good to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas with eSIM, you sometimes have to contact the carrier. Now with the major carriers, you can do it online. However, and I understand why they do this for verification, but if, let's say, what happens is when you do an eSIM transfer, they send you a text message to your current phone, and you have to enter the code. And if your phone is broken for whatever reason and you can't receive that, then you have to contact the carrier or go to a store or something like that. Whereas if the phone was still salvageable, you could just take the SIM card and put it into a new phone. So I really, and I'm still not really a fan of forcing people to eSIM. Give people the choice.
No, I'm there with you, Mike. And I think probably one of the reasons that Google is doing this, because I was on the Google Fi since 2015, and then in late 2018, I went totally, eSIM with the Google Fi on my Pixel 3. But so what it is that when you're setting up a device, if you have a Pixel device, you have choices of those. And if you're on Google Fi, it doesn't matter whatever Pixel phone it is. It just works once you say I'm on Google Fi and you put it in. And it just works, but not the other ones. You got to get these QR codes and all that nonsense. So I can see where that frustration is. If they could just let us have that physical SIM card. I mean, I haven't been using physical SIM cards since late 2018 because I was on Fi and I didn't switch from Fi till last September when I went to US Mobile. So all these years from 2015 to 2025, I was on Google Fi.
Yeah. Now
It's
it
very
depends on the
simple.
carrier. AT&T makes it pretty simple. You can just go to their website to the bring your own device page. You put in the IMEI of the number of the phone you're transferring to, and it works.
Yeah, so you didn't
Uh,
have to do that with our Fi.
yeah.
Once you choose it in the setup screen that I want to use an eSIM, and it gives you a list of carriers that have eSIM capabilities. Once you tap on Fi, you are good to go.
Right. So what I
That's how it
did,
should be.
yeah, I would agree. So what I did is the Pixel 10 was out, but I wanted a phone that still took a physical SIM card. So I bought both of the last Pixel phones that would take a physical SIM, the 9 and the
The 9.
9A.
Yeah.
Those are the last physical SIM. Now
Oh
the
my
Pixel
God.
10, yeah, outside of the US, though, it still had the physical SIM. That's the part
Yeah.
that. Well, okay, so that was good. So I was using my Pixel 9 then, and I was fine with it. It was Android 16. It was good. And then the Pixel 10 I found out had, well, of course, this has now come down to the older Pixels, but at the time it wasn't. It was only on the 10. That scene description feature you demonstrated with the Pixel 10 with the camera, where you could swipe 2 fingers down.
I love that. It's a
Oh, me too.
beautiful
And at the
feature.
time, it was only on the 10. Now I don't know how far back it goes, but it does work on the 9 and 9A now also. And I don't know how far back it goes, but the other feature that is good with the 10, and only the 10 has this, was with the talkback feature. If it's an unlabeled thing, it will now use the Gemini model that's on board to describe it, which
Yeah.
is nice. So at that point, it's like, okay, do I bite the bullet? I go eSIM even though I don't really like it, or do I just do without those features? Well, I decided I did want those features, so I did get a Pixel 10, and I did ditch the physical SIM. I still not totally happy about it, but I really wanted those features, so yeah, so that's how I ended up with the 3 Pixel phones that I've got. So now I have the 3 Pixels and an iPhone 17, and for the foreseeable future, that's the phones that I'm going to have. I have no interest in getting any other.
What a wonderful story, Mike. I always love this because you got people that uh, their phone almost caught on fire, and I'm looking at someone in here. I had to remove the battery in order to end the call. Sally.
Well,
You
it's
do what
been
you have to do.
it's been officially 13 years since that happened, but still, it's like yesterday.
Were the batteries
Yeah.
removable back then, or did you have to like break the phone apart to get it
Yeah.
out?
Like it was removable, but what I like you can just press the power button to end the call, but I was like out of my mind to do that.
But you didn't know. And so I
Yeah.
was just thinking over that, and I was wondering what would have happened had you had a phone that didn't have a removable battery. But
Okay,
thank
I was
God
in
back then,
trouble.
all of
Yeah.
those things had removable battery. So, whether you remove the battery to end the call, or you put it under a pillow, like one of the Android Journey stories indicated, and almost caught on fire. So we got
dear.
all these beautiful stories of the Android Journey story. And this is why it's always my favorite, because no 2 stories are the same. There's always something different about somebody's journey.
Now, it
And
might be
so,
fun to talk about. I
yeah.
don't know if you want to do this, but what I like better about Android.
Yeah. What are some of the things that stand out for you that you really dig
So,
outside of that?
especially with the AI image with picture description, which, by the way, I used to use Be My Eyes quite a bit, and I still have it. I have Ally, although again I don't use it much, and I've also got Seeing AI. My big 3 are ChatGPT, Grok, and Gemini. And I do subscribe to those because you get access to their better models. And really, for picture descriptions, you want to use the highest model that they have. That's really to get the best at description. That's what I found. And when it comes to photos, you go to the camera app. Of course, the guided frame, that whole thing is wonderful. The iPhone, it kind of has something similar where it vibrates, but it's not as good as what Android has. But when taking a picture, and then when you want to go into an AI app and give it that picture, it's just so much easier to browse because Android gives you more access to files. So you can just go to your, what is it, DCIM folder, camera folder, and then just open the file. You don't have to go through this whole photo library and share the photo. It's just so much easier on Android to do that with pictures. When you want to delete it, just go in and delete it, like deleting a file on a computer. You don't
Absolutely.
have to delete it and then go to
Yeah.
the deleted photos album and then take it out of there. It's just, it's crazy. It's just so much easier.
Really like that. I really like this, like going to the files and deleting the file, and it's so easy. Like it takes only a couple of clicks.
Exactly. It's that for me is huge when it comes to Android. Another one is, if you want to, you can sideload apps. Now I know Google's going to be putting in some restrictions on that later this year, but here's the thing with that.
But it's still there, no matter
it is,
what.
and if you use ADB, the Android debug bridge, you can bypass all of that. Install that on your computer, go to a terminal or command window and just do ADB space, install space, name of the app, you're done. That's all still going to be there. With iOS, you can't do any of that. So that's another thing.
Those are great features, and what I really like is that help me edit. We talked about that a little while ago. Maybe I want to put myself next to Karen and take Sally out of it. Just Karen and I. Take Sally out.
Well, no way.
Now, as far as Android goes, I think I would probably stick with the Pixels. I know the Samsung hardware is better, and I don't know. I've heard from people say, yeah, Samsung is, it does work, and some have said no, it's not as good. There are problems. But one thing that really is kind of a deal breaker for me with Samsung is why don't they just use Google's TalkBack? I know you can sideload it, but you shouldn't have to go through that. So I think when it comes to Android, I think I am going to be a diehard Pixel person. I don't see myself getting anything else.
You're in a motel with me, Mike. We love these Pixels. You can get me out of. I used to be a very staunch Samsung kind of guy until 2015 when I jumped onto the Nexus 6, and my world changed from then. And you can convince me to go to Samsung, unless, of course, it's using pure Google stuff and like my Galaxy S4. Other than that, no, I can't.
Well, you also get the updates quicker too. You're not going to get the updates quicker with any other brand other than a Pixel.
I mean, like we had that Braille display issue with the Galaxy some years ago, and it took them a long time to fix that. I'm not going to put myself in such
Here's that question for you guys. Then imagine you're living in a place where Pixel isn't available. Which one would you get?
Well, in that case, you have no choice.
In that case, you don't have a choice. Then you got to do what you got to do.
You got to do what you got to do. Yeah.
So I'm asking for the rest of the world. Yeah.
Definitely, I'll go with a Samsung if I'm not.
That's what happens here.
That doesn't have Pixel phones, but I don't know why Turkey, of all places, wouldn't have the Pixel phone, and we have it in places that I didn't think would have.
Because Google don't want to take a risk. We have the Chinese phones dominating here.
Yeah, but the other places had, no other place had more Chinese phones than India does. India has Pixel. Yeah,
that's interesting.
You're nowhere near India,
I don't know why. Really don't know why.
Yeah,
I should blame on the carriers. Yeah,
exactly.
But yeah, I stick with Pixels, and if anybody asks me, for what's the best Android phone to get, I always say go with the Pixel. That's the only one I recommend for, again, the updates, for the most accessible. If you can get a Pixel, that's absolutely the the one
Yeah,
to
I
get.
mean, like, look, I'm on, Android 17 Beta 4 that fixed that broken whatever with Android 17 Beta 2. If I didn't have those updates, I would be toast. So, yeah, definitely for me, it's Pixel all the way. Well, Mike, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. And,
Let's
as
do it
always,
again sometime. I don't know
yeah,
if you'd ever
well,
be interested in doing a segment maybe on the robot vacuums, which apps works the best, what
yeah, you could.
issues
You
you're
could.
gonna run into. Each one has their own
Yeah.
unique little quirks when it comes to accessibility. The interesting thing is, I think they're using cross-platform stuff because, for the most part, the accessibility issues that happen with a particular one happen on both Android and the iPhone. Now, the screen readers have different ways of dealing with them, but it's the same issues that you're going to run into. That's the interesting part. And each one has their own things that you have to kind of work around. So that might be a fun segment, because I've got robots from every brand pretty much.
He's got like 15 of those guys. I thought I had
Did
too
you?
many when I have only 3, and I thought I had too many, but gosh, this guy has like 15. So I think you are the vacuum junkie, Mike.
I collect vacuums. It's a hobby. I have 66 regular ones, and then I have the 15 robots.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So if you could do a segment, because we have that question coming on. So if you could like do a section, record something about that, that would be good. But outside of that, remember, we have an open guest appearance. So anytime you want to come on, just let me know. We'll send you the URL. And to anyone out there, you guys remember that. We want people to come in whenever they feel like it. And so anytime anyone wants to come on to the podcast to participate with us, just let us know, and you're in with us.
Yeah, this was fun.
Well, thank you so much, and we hope we see you next week when we have that
Yes.
listener
Yeah, I'm
session
hoping
at
to
the
be
same
there.
time.
Yeah.
And
Once
so
we have the
just
link,
have
absolutely.
some fun.
This
Yeah,
is great. Yep.
thank you so much.